Hello, and thanks for tuning in to Compass Media. I'm your host, Finbar Markey. I'm joined today by Peter Dooley. Peter is a community activist from Dublin based south and is also known as an organiser for the Stop the War campaign. There's been a number of actions and demonstrations by the Stop the War campaign over the last year. Peter has come on tonight because there's another demonstration organised for the American Embassy next Saturday at 1 p.m. in Dublin. Peter believes from our discussions that the war is only escalating and Ireland is further and further trading its neutrality as the Ukraine war escalates. Thanks for joining us today, Peter.
Thanks very much, Finbar.
Peter, I mentioned there that in previous discussions, planning this short programme, you had told me that you felt that everything seemed to be escalating, not calming down since the last demonstration about 3 weeks ago. Would you like to elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, well, absolutely. In the last number of weeks, we've seen a huge escalation in terms of the conflict. We've seen talks about getting more fighter jets to Ukraine and more escalation, more conscription of troops, and then more and more people dying with this as well. And then any demands for peace have been shut down completely by the US deep state. Essentially, people like Anthony Blinken has been coming out shooting down any talks that haven't diplomacy or peace talks and looking for heightened escalations and dragging other countries like China and many other countries into it, talking about sanctioning China as well. And in part to the Irish involvement, most recently we've signed up to this peace fund, and today Joseph Borrell has decided to give that €2 billion over in munitions and more weapons to Ukraine using a peace fund that Ireland has signed up to. There's up to 30 troops being sent across to work on demining and ordnance work in Ukrainian soldiers as well. And, obviously with Ireland, we're tied up to this PESCO deal as well. So it's eroding our neutrality bit by bit. And a lot of people aren't aware of what's going on, but it's just heightened escalation in terms of the tension there. But what's happening here in Ireland is having huge impacts. And the sanctions as well are having huge impacts on people.
I'm told that the US is sending depleted uranium-tipped missiles to Ukraine. I read a report on that over the last few days. That in itself is an escalation. We know what the impact of uranium-tipped missiles have been in places like Fallujah in Iraq. So probably more importantly now than ever, it is to build up some kind of a demonstration and a protest movement in Ireland to maintain our neutrality, but also to try to get our government to advocate for peace. Have you seen any signs since the last demonstration that our government have wavered from that road they're on at the moment, in which they are determined to support the continued military escalation?
They've gone further in the last month, I would argue. I think we held a very good demonstration at the Spur about a month ago, which was very well attended. And a lot of people were giving an honest analysis of what was going on in terms of the conflict in Ukraine and the real reasons how it started, rather than actually giving the mainstream media narrative. But in the last month, we've seen a huge push towards escalation. In terms of the Irish involvement, most recently, Leo Varadkar was over in Washington, D.C., giving a bowl of shamrock to Joe Biden. And he said he'd roll out the red carpet when Joe Biden comes here in April. Instead of actually asking him a question about, why are we looking for peace? Ireland as a neutral country should be standing for peace. But now we're just rolling along with everybody else. It's absolutely remarkable. It shows how cowardly the Irish leaders have been in the face of any basic negotiations for peace and standing up for our neutrality. This is actually a complete betrayal of Irish neutrality, and it's an erosion bit by bit of our neutrality that started a long time ago in terms of the supporting the American troops coming through Shannon Airport. And now we've had all this deeper cuts, being part of these NATO partnership for peace since 1999. And then we've seen more erosion of our neutrality most recently, as I spoke about earlier, such as sending 30 troops to get involved in this conflict. This is a direct intervention by Ireland in this conflict, plus spending money on so-called peace, on weapons, and not to mention the huge refugee crisis we have in Ireland as well. And the sanctions, as I said as well, with higher energy costs and tipping people over the edge. This Irish government are absolutely just bowing down to the warmongers and the neoconservatives in the United States, rather than standing up for the Irish people and the sovereignty of the Irish nation.
Yeah, and it's not really just about Ukraine anymore, is it? Because it looks like we're on a course led by the United States government. And I always try to maintain the line and the truth that it's not the United States people that are the problem, but it seems to be their government and the regime that's in place there at the moment. But they seem to be bringing us on a road of escalation beyond Ukraine to conflict with China. And it seems that that might come sooner rather than later. What are your worries about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, China, over about a month ago, came out with a peace proposal that was completely ignored by the collective West and the United States regime as well. And I think that there's deep concerns in terms of the moves towards. Last week, we saw a huge deal with Australia, the UK, and the US about bringing their nuclear armaments in terms of the submarine packaging they have and all this sort of stuff, and trying to bring them into a bigger, wider geopolitical conflict. And we see like Taiwan and what's happening there. We see Philippines, more naval bases and military bases for America, just targeting China. And it's obviously bringing them into this conflict, and it's bringing China and Russia essentially closer together. They're in a de facto alliance now. We have Xi Jinping and Putin meeting, who are actually coming together and getting closer ties than ever. And if they're looking at sanctioning China, for instance, they're already destroying the European economy, deindustrializing Europe through these sanctions. It's unthinkable to think if they sanction China. China is essentially the workhouse of the world, and a lot of our manufacturing and products we get are coming from China, and it's just ludicrous. This is absolutely ludicrous what they're doing, but it's so dangerous.
It's more than just sanctions, because there's a lot of saber rattling and there's talk of war. And John Pilger wrote a very important article a number of months ago about the pending or the looming war with China, he called it. And so this peace movement, that the Stop the War campaign, which is attended by many different groups, the Peace and Neutrality Alliance, the Truth and Neutrality Alliance, and different individuals or groups from north and south of the country and over from the west of Ireland, attended the last demonstration at the Spire. And I'm sure this one hopefully will be bigger at the American Embassy. But this is about stopping the Third World War and the use of nuclear weapons. And although people are prone to going about their own lives, and you can understand that on a daily basis and not wanting to think about these things, the stark reality is that if the people don't stand up and start putting their feet on the street, we are facing a nuclear war. And I think that's what the importance of these demonstrations and these rallies are. And I would urge people to go. Compass Media have attended the last 3 demonstrations, anti-war demonstrations that have occurred in Dublin, and we've broadcast live from them where we can, and we put out videos of them. And we are not just going as media in this matter, we're actually going as supporters as well, because one of the commitments and principles of Compass Media is that we try to advocate for peace. So we're going to be there. In terms of what the plans are for the day, what I enjoyed about the previous demonstration you organised, Peter, was it didn't go on for half a day. It was an hour and a half. There were a few speakers, very passionate speakers, and there was a great spirit at it as well. There was people from Ukraine, people from Russia, people from Ireland, and other countries as well attended on that day. What are your plans and expectations for next Saturday?
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Finbar, and I appreciate the independent media coverage, which is vital now more than ever to get that out there as well. But I think what our intention is to build a huge anti-war movement in Ireland. And you're quite right in terms of what you're trying to discuss to people. Like, a lot of people are very busy with their lives and a lot of issues going on, and that's understandable. But what we're facing is essentially the existence of ourselves on this planet. And nuclear Armageddon is really unthinkable. And if you consider over 40 years ago in Central Park, there was a huge, couple of million people at a demonstration, and it was called Let Us Live. People now need to come out on the streets and stand with ordinary people. Ordinary people are being sent to their deaths in Bakhmut and absolute horrors of places as well. And yet the Irish government and the politicians are just going on with it, absolutely just driving this into a deeper exchange, for instance, possibly with China. And who knows where this is going to end up. It's absolutely unthinkable that it should be going this way. But what's really important is that when we come together, and how we can affect changes, when we come together from below on the streets and demand that change. And we should be holding all these so-called elitists to account in Ireland, in the United States, for what they're doing. Because the problem is that they don't serve the interests of ordinary people. The ordinary people in the United States are suffering with a housing crisis, with Medicare crisis, with huge crises, but yet the government can find loads of money to support an ongoing conflict and to keep propping up and profiting the military-industrial complex. And that's the big issue in society. You know, we should be looking at nuclear disarmaments. We should be looking at proper policies that puts the needs of people first. And what's going to happen now with this is that this wider, as you said, saber rattling and so much going on, that we don't know where it's going to end. It's only going to end if we come together on the streets and demand peace, demand negotiation. The huge demonstrations around Europe, which are fantastic to see, but we need to replicate them and build them bigger here in Ireland, because Ireland have a long and proud history of standing up for oppressed people everywhere, and standing up beyond that for our neutrality, and standing up on a platform of anti-war. I think that's a basic essential. Nobody should be sent off to be butchered in these wars. And it's not the rich, it's not Biden or his family being sent off to die. It's ordinary working class people like you or I, or people we know, Finbar, that are going to be sent off to die. And that's the people who suffer and who die. And it's all the people they leave behind. And what does it serve? What purpose does it serve? It's what really does it serve? It doesn't serve the interests of ordinary people. And I think we have to really build a principled movement that's people's led and free from political parties, and led by ordinary people who stand up on a platform for peace and stand up for the interests of ordinary working class people in Ireland and across Europe.
I think it'll be easy to keep it free of political parties, because it would appear across the board that nobody in any of the political parties is willing to challenge the standard narrative that's going on. I think the propaganda campaign around this war from the corporate media and from the leading political parties has been so strong that people who do doubt the narrative in the political circles, and who will speak privately about doubting the standard narrative about who's responsible and what the history of this war is, they won't say it publicly because they're afraid of a backlash. And so it is literally being left to working class activists like yourself and others to create this from the ground up, with no money, with no funding, just by trying to use social capital and social media to do that. So I do wish you well. We will be recording, as I say, on Saturday from outside the US Embassy. I won't make an absolute promise. Technical things can arise, but we will try to go live from that demonstration as well. In the meantime, Peter, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Thanks very much, Finbar. I appreciate it. And listen, keep up the good work and keep the real news going out there and real truthful analysis. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter.